One of my favorite things to observe and learn about crows are the interactions that they have, where there's a coordinated effort to defend something that's important to them, whether it's the danger of a predator like an eagle or a hawk or a cat, or whether it's just rival crows competing for territory and nest sites and food. And I have often talked about the vocal mobbing alarms that crows will make in the presence of a predator like an owl. Because these cawing sounds that crows make are just so loud and noticeable and can lead us to discover some really amazing things about not just the crows, but also the relationship of those crows to their wider landscape and the other animals in the landscape. This type of vocal alarm is very common, but crows actually have another type of alarm that is primarily expressed through body language and in many ways is much less noticeable. It's a lot more subtle because the crows tend to be relatively silent when they do this. But it actually is also very common, and in some situations it might even be more common than the vocal alarms that crows often make. Basically, the way that I think about this is that it's kind of like an aerial hook, where the crow will fly in from a particular direction towards a target, and when they hit the target, they sort of circle around it, they hook around it, and then they come back to another perch, sometimes the exact same perch that they were starting with. So I was out at the park a few days ago and filming some crows, and I saw a really perfect example of this taking place. When I arrived, there was a group of crows that were feeding on a baseball field and, just doing their usual sort of crow feeding thing on the ground. And at some point, another group flew in and landed a short ways away from them and started feeding in the same manner, but in the same general space. And I noticed these two groups of crows kind of eyeballing each other, and at a certain point, the group that had been there first started making these aerial hook displays towards the other group of crows that had arrived. And in doing this, they basically started by just looking at the other crows and making a few cawing sounds. But then at a certain point, it built to a place where you could see the crow get a running start and fly forward and then kind of just hook around the other group of crows and fly right back to where they started. And it's the kind of thing that is almost so subtle that if you didn't really know what you were looking for, you probably wouldn't think anything of it. This sort of activity happens all the time, and obviously in this case, it's directed at another set of crows. This would be more territorial behavior, but they will do this towards owls, they'll do this towards ravens, they'll do this towards hawks, and it's a very common body language. And as I was watching them, they repeated this quite a number of times, like at least 5 or 6 times over a period of several minutes. They were repeatedly flying and hooking, and basically the way that I think about this is that they're kind of drawing attention to a particular point in the landscape, that the place where they hook around, it can help other crows to identify the spot where the danger is or where the invader is. So it's just a really good reminder that when we're doing bird language, we want to use all our senses. We don't just want to rely on our sense of sound or our sense of sight, because there are different types of alarms that happen in different sensory channels, and sometimes it depends on the type of predator that is there or the type of landscape that they're in. I notice a lot of times in open landscapes where there's a lot of visibility, birds sometimes will not alarm vocally quite as much, and they'll use more demonstrative body language, which is what we're seeing here with the crows. They can do it both on the ground and also up in the trees. And if you just keep your eyes open and watch the crows and look for this behavior, you will definitely see this. It's a very common behavior. In many ways, this is kind of like a precursor to the dive bombing behavior, where you'll see crows actually dive bombing their target in a repeating manner, where they're doing, basically it's an aerial hook, repeating over and over again several times in a row in a way that comes very close to their target. So keep your eyes peeled out there for crows hooking and doing this visual body language of alarm. And they may very well lead you to some sort of eagle or a hawk or some other type of really cool animal on the landscape. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.